The afternoon sun filtered through the oak trees in the Martinez family's backyard, casting dancing shadows across the freshly mowed lawn. Sarah Martinez hummed softly as she pulled wet clothes from the wicker basket, pinning them one by one to the clothesline that stretched between two sturdy posts. It was a perfect autumn day in rural Oregon, the kind where the air smelled of pine needles and the temperature hovered at a comfortable 68 degrees. "Mommy, look," Emma's bright voice called out from behind her. Sarah turned to see her 3-year-old daughter spinning in circles near the wooden swing set Tom had built last summer. Emma's blonde curls bounced with each rotation, her purple jacket fluttering like butterfly wings. The little girl's face was flushed with joy, her blue eyes sparkling with the pure, unbridled happiness that only a child could possess. "That's wonderful, sweetie. You're spinning like a ballerina," Sarah called back, smiling as she clipped another of Tom's work shirts to the line. Emma giggled and continued her spinning dance, her small pink shoes leaving little prints in the soft grass. Sarah watched her for a moment longer, her heart swelling with the kind of love that sometimes felt too big for her chest. 3 years ago, she couldn't have imagined this life, this beautiful daughter, this peaceful home, this simple moment of domestic bliss. She turned back to the laundry basket, reaching for a pair of Emma's small overalls. "Just a few more pieces, baby, then we'll go inside and have some apple slices with peanut butter. How does that sound?" Silence. Sarah's hands paused mid-reach. The absence of Emma's voice sent a tiny prickle of unease down her spine. "Emma," she called, still facing the clothesline. No response, not even the sound of footsteps on grass. Sarah spun around, her eyes immediately going to the spot where Emma had been dancing. The space was empty. The swing swayed gently in the breeze, but no small body occupied it. "Emma?" Sarah's voice rose slightly as she scanned the yard. "Emma, honey, this isn't funny. Where are you?" Her eyes darted to the wooden playhouse in the corner, empty. To the garden patch where Emma loved to search for worms, no sign of her. To the back porch where they'd left her tricycle, nothing. "Emma?" Sarah's voice cracked as panic began to claw its way up her throat. She dropped the laundry basket, clothes tumbling onto the grass as she ran toward the swing set. Emma's pink teddy bear lay abandoned in the grass, its button eyes staring up at the sky. Sarah's heart began to hammer against her ribcage. She spun in a complete circle, her eyes wild as they scanned every corner of the yard. "Emma, baby, where are you? This isn't a game." The backyard suddenly felt enormous and terrifying. Sarah ran to the side gate, latched shut just as she'd left it. She raced to the other side, also closed. Her breath came in short gasps as she sprinted to the edge of their property, where their manicured lawn gave way to the dense Oregon forest. "Emma!" Her scream echoed through the trees. The forest seemed to swallow her voice, giving nothing back but an oppressive silence. Sarah's mind raced through possibilities, each more terrifying than the last. Emma knew not to go into the woods alone. She was a good girl, an obedient girl. She wouldn't just wander off, would she? "Oh God, oh God, oh God," Sarah whispered, her entire body beginning to shake. She checked her watch, 3:47 p.m. She'd last seen Emma maybe 3 minutes ago, maybe 4. How could a child disappear in 4 minutes? With trembling hands, she pulled her cell phone from her pocket and dialed 911. The phone rang once, twice. Each ring felt like an eternity. 911, what's your emergency? "My daughter," Sarah's voice broke. She pressed her free hand against her mouth, trying to steady herself. "My daughter is missing. She's 3 years old. She was just here. She was right here in our backyard, and now she's gone. I can't find her anywhere." "Ma'am, I need you to stay calm. What's your location?" Sarah rattled off their address, her words tumbling over each other. "We live at the edge of Willow Creek. There's forest behind our house. Dense forest. Oh God, what if she went into the trees? She's only 3. She's wearing a purple jacket and pink shoes and—" "Ma'am, officers are being dispatched right now. I need you to stay on the line with me. When did you last see your daughter?" 5 minutes ago, maybe 6. She was spinning near the swing set. I turned my back for just a second, just to hang laundry. I was paying attention. I was watching her. Tears streamed down Sarah's face as guilt crashed over her like a wave. "I understand. You're doing everything right. Can you check inside your house? Sometimes children hide." Sarah was already running toward the back door, yanking it open so hard it banged against the wall. Emma, are you in here?" She tore through the kitchen, checking under the table behind the chairs. She raced to the living room, looking behind the couch in the toy chest. She sprinted up the stairs, checking Emma's bedroom, the bathroom, the master bedroom, even the small linen closet where Emma sometimes played hide-and-seek. Nothing. "She's not here," Sarah sobbed into the phone. "She's not in the house. Someone took her. Someone must have taken her. Oh God, my baby girl." The sound of sirens began to wail in the distance, growing louder with each passing second. Sarah ran back outside, her legs feeling like they might give out beneath her. She stood in the center of the backyard, spinning slowly, her eyes scanning the tree line. Where was her daughter? Where was her Emma? The first police car screeched into their driveway at 3:52 p.m., exactly 15 minutes after Sarah had last heard her daughter's voice. Within minutes, more vehicles arrived. Officers fanned out across the property with flashlights, even though the sun hadn't yet set. Tom Martinez arrived home from work to find his driveway full of emergency vehicles, and his wife collapsed in the arms of a female police officer. Sarah, what happened? Where's Emma?" Tom's voice broke as he ran toward his wife. Sarah looked up at her husband, her face streaked with tears and dirt from where she'd been crawling through bushes searching for any sign of their daughter. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Only a sound, a primal, agonizing wail that came from the deepest part of her soul. Their daughter was gone, and as the sun began to sink toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, one terrifying fact became clear. They were racing against time, and time was not on their side. Detective Lisa Morrison's unmarked sedan pulled up to the Martinez residence at 4:37 p.m. She'd been in the middle of paperwork at the station when the call came through, a missing 3-year-old. 15 years on the force had taught her that the first few hours were everything. After that, statistics became your enemy, and hope became a fragile thing that could shatter with each passing minute. She stepped out of her vehicle and immediately assessed the scene. Organized chaos, that's what she called it. Local officers were establishing a perimeter, neighbors were gathering on the street, and she could see 2 figures collapsed on the front porch. The parents. She recognized that particular brand of anguish from across the lawn. "Detective Morrison," she introduced herself, approaching Tom and Sarah Martinez. "I know this is the worst moment of your lives, but I need you both to focus. We're going to find Emma, but I need your help to do it." Tom looked up at her with hollow eyes. His work uniform, a mechanic's coveralls from Jensen's auto shop, was still clean, a stark reminder that his day had been normal until 17 minutes ago. "What do you need?" His voice was hoarse, as if he'd been screaming. "Something with Emma's scent. Unwashed clothing, a favorite blanket, stuffed animal. The K9 units are 20 minutes out." Sarah was on her feet immediately, stumbling toward the front door. Her blanket. She sleeps with it every night. It's on her bed. She disappeared inside the house, leaving Tom alone with the detective. "Tell me about Emma," Morrison said, pulling out her notebook. "What's she like? Is she the type to wander off?" Tom shook his head vigorously. "No, never. She's cautious, actually, afraid of the dark, won't even go upstairs alone at night." His voice cracked. "She's terrified of the forest. We've told her never to go near the trees. She listened. She always listened." Morrison's pen paused on the paper. A child afraid of the forest wouldn't voluntarily enter it. That detail lodged itself in her mind like a splinter. Sarah returned with a yellow blanket covered in cartoon bumblebees, clutching it to her chest. This is hers. Please, please find my baby. Morrison took the blanket carefully, sealing it in an evidence bag. She radioed for the K-9 units to expedite their arrival. Then she turned back to the parents. I need you to think carefully. Any unusual vehicles in the neighborhood today, anyone who seemed out of place. Repair workers, delivery people, anyone at all. Tom and Sarah looked at each other. There was a silver car, Sarah said slowly, her brow furrowing. I saw it this morning when I took Emma to the mailbox. It was parked on the road, just sitting there. I thought maybe someone was lost or checking their phone. Did you see the driver? No, the windows were tinted. I didn't think anything of it at the time. Fresh tears spilled down Sarah's cheeks. Oh God, was someone watching us? Was someone watching my daughter? Morrison's jaw tightened. We'll check traffic cameras in the area. Right now, let's focus on the search. By 5:15 p.m., the operation had escalated dramatically. The local fire department arrived with additional lighting equipment. Volunteers from the community began streaming in, teachers from Emma's preschool, members of the local church, complete strangers who'd heard about the missing child on social media. Within an hour, over 100 people had assembled. Sheriff William Hodges took command, organizing search parties into grids. Listen up, everyone, we have a 3-year-old girl missing. Her name is Emma Martinez. Blonde hair, blue eyes, wearing a purple jacket and pink shoes. The temperature is currently 62 degrees and dropping. By nightfall, we're looking at temperatures in the low 40s. This child has been missing for approximately 90 minutes. Every second counts. The crowd murmured with determination and concern. Sheriff Hodges continued, holding up a map. We're dividing the forest into sectors. Stay with your teams. Call out her name regularly. Check under bushes, in hollow logs, any place a small child might hide or become trapped. If you find anything, and I mean anything, clothing, footprints, disturbed ground, you radio it in immediately. Do not contaminate potential evidence. As the sun touched the horizon, casting long shadows across the property, the search parties moved out. Flashlight beams cut through the gathering darkness like laser beams. The forest came alive with voices calling Emma's name. Emma. Emma, honey, can you hear us? Emma Martinez. The calls echoed through the trees, bouncing off trunks and disappearing into the dense undergrowth. But the forest gave nothing back except silence. Tom and Sarah stood at the edge of their property, forbidden by police from joining the search. Why can't we look for her? Tom demanded, his fists clenched. She's our daughter. Officer Rodriguez, assigned to stay with the family, spoke gently. Mr. Martinez, if Emma comes back on her own, someone needs to be here. And if, he paused carefully, if someone calls with information, we need you by the phone. Sarah sank to her knees on the grass, her hands pressed over her mouth to muffle her sobs. The what-ifs were destroying her from the inside. What if Emma had called for her and she hadn't heard? What if her daughter was hurt, scared, crying for her mommy in the darkness? What if, and this thought was almost too terrible to complete, what if someone had taken her daughter, and at this very moment, Emma was being driven farther and farther away? At 7:43 p.m., the local news crews arrived. Bright lights illuminated the Martinez home as reporters set up their cameras. Sheriff Hodges gave a brief statement, holding up a photo of Emma, her kindergarten picture, where she smiled with 2 missing front teeth and a sparkle in her eyes. We're asking anyone in the Willow Creek area who saw anything unusual this afternoon to contact the tip line immediately. We're also requesting that residents check their properties, sheds, garages, any outbuildings. Emma Martinez is 3 years old and has now been missing for 4 hours. 4 hours. The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. By 9:00 p.m., the temperature had dropped to 47 degrees. Search teams rotated out, exhausted volunteers replaced by fresh ones. Thermal imaging drones launched into the night sky, their operators searching for any heat signature that might be a small child. By midnight, over 200 people were involved in the search. The Martinez home had become a command center. Maps covered the dining room table. Radio chatter filled the air. Someone had brought coffee and sandwiches, but they sat untouched. Detective Morrison pulled Sheriff Hodges aside. "We need to consider all possibilities here, Will. The mother's timeline puts the disappearance at under 5 minutes. A 3-year-old can't cover much ground in 5 minutes, especially in that terrain. And the father says she's afraid of the forest." Hodges rubbed his weathered face. "You're thinking abduction." "I'm thinking we can't rule it out. That silver car Sarah mentioned. I want every traffic camera in a 10-mile radius pulled. And I want to know who in this area has a record." As the clock struck 1:00 a.m., Sarah sat on her front porch wrapped in a blanket, staring into the darkness. Tom paced behind her, his phone pressed to his ear as he called family members with updates. There were no updates, just the same terrible words repeated over and over. "No, we haven't found her yet." Somewhere in that vast darkness, Emma was alone. Was she cold? Was she crying? Was she still? Sarah couldn't finish that thought. She wouldn't. Instead, she closed her eyes and prayed to God, to the universe, to anyone who might be listening. "Please," she whispered into the night, "please bring my baby home." But the darkness offered no answers, and as the hours crawled by with agonizing slowness, hope began to feel like a luxury they could no longer afford. The night stretched on, cold and unforgiving, while Emma remained lost to the world. Dawn broke over Willow Creek at 6:47 a.m., painting the sky in shades of gray and pale orange. Sarah Martinez hadn't slept. She sat on her porch steps, still wrapped in the same blanket, her eyes red and swollen from 15 hours of crying. Tom stood behind her, one hand on her shoulder, both of them staring at the forest as if willing their daughter to emerge from the trees. The overnight search had yielded nothing. Not a single shoe print, not a torn piece of clothing, not even a broken branch that might indicate Emma's passage. It was as if the little girl had simply evaporated into thin air. Detective Morrison approached them with 2 cups of coffee. "Mr. and Mrs. Martinez, the K-9 unit from the state police is arriving within the hour. They're bringing their best tracker." "Their best?" Tom's voice was hollow. "We had dogs here last night. They found nothing." "This one's different," Morrison said quietly. "His name is Bravo. He's never failed a search." At 7:23 a.m., a white SUV with Oregon State Police K-9 unit, emblazoned on the side, pulled up to the property. The driver's side door opened, and a man in his mid-30s stepped out. Officer Marcus Chen stood about 6 feet tall, with close-cropped black hair and an expression of focused intensity. He moved with the purposeful stride of someone who had done this many times before. But it was his passenger that drew everyone's attention. The rear door opened, and a massive German shepherd leaped gracefully to the ground. Bravo was a magnificent animal, 85 pounds of muscle and determination, with a thick black and tan coat and alert, intelligent brown eyes that seemed to assess everything around him in seconds. He wore a red service vest with "Search and Rescue" printed in bold white letters. Sheriff Hodges met Chen halfway across the lawn. "Thank God you're here, Marcus. We've been at this for 15 hours with nothing." Chen shook his hand firmly. "Fill me in." As they walked toward the command center, Hodges briefed him. Emma Martinez, 3 years old, missing since yesterday afternoon around 3:45 p.m. Mother was hanging laundry, turned her back for maybe 5 minutes. Child vanished. We've searched a 2-mile radius, used thermal imaging, had over 200 volunteers combing every inch of that forest. Not a single trace. Chen's expression darkened. "Weather last night. Low of 41 degrees. If she's out there." Hodges didn't finish the sentence. Chen knelt beside Bravo, running his hand along the dog's back. "You hear that, boy? Little girl's been out there all night. We need to find her, fast." Bravo's ears perked up, and he gave a soft whine of acknowledgement. The dog had been with Chen for 4 years, and in that time they'd become more than partners. They were a single unit, each able to read the other's signals perfectly. They had 32 successful rescues together. 32 times they'd brought someone home alive. Chen had a 100% success rate, and he intended to keep it that way. Sarah Martinez approached them, her hands clutched together. "Are you the officer with the special dog?" "Yes, ma'am. I'm Officer Chen, and this is Bravo." He kept his voice calm and professional, but his eyes were kind. "I'm going to need something with your daughter's scent on it, something she's worn recently or slept with." Sarah held out the yellow bumblebee blanket. "This is hers. She sleeps with it every single night." Chen took the blanket and held it down to Bravo's level. "Bravo, come here, boy, take a good smell. This is our girl. This is who we're looking for." The German shepherd thrust his nose into the fabric, inhaling deeply. His nostrils flared as he processed the scent, committing it to memory. His entire body seemed to vibrate with energy and purpose. After several seconds, Bravo lifted his head and looked up at Chen with those intense brown eyes. "Good boy," Chen murmured. "Now find her, find Emma." Bravo's nose went immediately to the ground. He began moving across the backyard in a zigzag pattern, systematically covering every inch. Other officers had done this with their dogs last night, but Chen noticed something different in Bravo's behavior. The dog was more methodical, more focused. He wasn't just searching, he was hunting. The yard was contaminated with scent from dozens of searchers, but Bravo filtered through it all. He circled the swing set twice, then moved to where the teddy bear had been found. His tail began wagging faster. "He's got something," Chen said, his pulse quickening. Bravo moved toward the tree line, his nose sweeping back and forth like a radar dish. Then suddenly he stopped. His ears shot forward, his body went rigid, and he released a sharp, insistent bark. "What is it, boy? What do you smell?" Bravo barked again and pulled hard on his leash, straining toward a particular section of the forest. But not just any section. He was heading toward the steep ravine that search teams had marked with caution tape and dangerous terrain signs. Sheriff Hodges jogged over. "Marcus, we already cleared that area. It's a 60-foot drop into a rocky ravine. There's no way a 3-year-old could have made it down there without serious injury. We focused on more accessible terrain." Chen studied the ravine, then looked down at Bravo. The dog was adamant, pulling so hard that Chen had to brace himself. "Bravo doesn't make mistakes," he said quietly. "If he says she went this way, she went this way." "But it's impossible." "Sheriff, with respect, we're wasting time." Chen's voice was firm. "Bravo has a track record, trust him." Bravo barked again, more urgently this time. The sound echoed through the morning air, and something about it sent chills down Sarah's spine. She watched from the yard as the officer and dog approached the steep embankment that everyone had dismissed as impossible. Chen radioed for backup. "I need rope equipment and a medical team on standby. We're going into the ravine." "Copy that," the radio crackled back. "Be advised, rescue crews attempted that descent last night and deemed it too dangerous." "We're not rescue crews," Chen replied. "We're search and rescue K9, there's a difference." He attached a longer lead to Bravo's vest and began the descent. The slope was treacherous, loose rocks, slippery with morning dew, thick roots that grabbed at ankles. A normal search dog might have hesitated, but Bravo moved with confidence, his powerful legs finding purchase where there seemed to be none. 20 feet down, 30 feet, 40 feet. The forest grew denser, the air cooler. Chen's radio crackled with concerned voices asking for updates, but he ignored them. His focus was entirely on Bravo. The dog's behavior was changing. His tail wagged faster, his breathing quickened, and then Bravo released a series of sharp, excited barks that echoed through the ravine like gunfire. The sound that said, "I found her. I found what we're looking for." Chen's heart hammered in his chest as he scrambled down the remaining distance. Good boy, Bravo. Good boy, where is she? Show me. Bravo disappeared behind a cluster of boulders, his barking becoming more insistent, more urgent. Chen followed, squeezing between two large rocks, and then his breath caught in his throat. Wedged in a small cave-like formation between three massive boulders was Emma Martinez. Her purple jacket was torn and dirty. Her blonde curls were matted with leaves and dirt. Her skin had a bluish tint that made Chen's blood run cold. But her chest was moving, barely but moving. "I've got her," Chen shouted into his radio. "Emma Martinez located, approximately 50 feet into the ravine, grid section 7. Need medical evac immediately. Child is alive but critical." Bravo had already squeezed into the tight space and was lying down beside Emma's small body, pressing his warm fur against her. The dog's body heat was the first warmth the little girl had felt in over 16 hours. As Chen carefully reached for Emma to check her vital signs, his trained eyes caught something that made his stomach drop. Emma's shoes, her little pink shoes, were placed neatly side by side about 3 feet away from where she lay, and in the mud beside those shoes were boot prints, adult-sized boot prints, size 11 at least. Emma hadn't wandered here, someone had put her here. And as that realization settled over him like ice water, Chen knew that finding Emma was only the beginning of this story. The real question was, who had done this, and were they still out there watching? Officer Marcus Chen's hands moved with practiced precision despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. Emma's skin was cold, dangerously cold. He pressed 2 fingers against her tiny neck, searching for a pulse. There, faint but there. 40 beats per minute, far too slow for a child her age. "Emma, sweetie, can you hear me?" His voice was gentle but urgent. "My name is Marcus. I'm a police officer, and I'm here to take you home to Mommy and Daddy." No response. Emma's eyelids fluttered but didn't open. Bravo whined softly, pressing himself closer to the child, his body creating a cocoon of warmth around her. The dog's instincts were remarkable. He understood that hypothermia was the immediate threat, and his body heat could make the difference between life and death. "Good boy, Bravo. Stay with her," Chen murmured, even as his mind raced through protocols. Moving Emma could cause more harm if she had internal injuries, but leaving her here while waiting for equipment wasn't an option. The child was in critical condition. The radio on his shoulder crackled to life. "Chen, what's your status? Medical team is gearing up, but the descent is going to take time. We're talking 20 minutes minimum to get stretcher equipment down there." 20 minutes. Chen looked at Emma's blue lips, her shallow breathing. "She doesn't have 20 minutes, he said into the radio. "Her core temperature is critically low. I'm bringing her up myself." "Negative, Chen. That climb is too dangerous with an unconscious child." "I've made my decision." Chen cut off the transmission and carefully assessed the situation. The space where Emma lay was barely large enough for her small body. How had she even gotten in here? More importantly, how had an adult managed to place her here? He looked again at those boot prints, now taking photos with his phone. The prints led to the cave-like opening, then away, heading back up the ravine by a different route. Whoever had done this knew the terrain. This wasn't random. This was calculated. Chen forced himself to focus on the immediate crisis. He could investigate later. Right now, he had to save this child's life. "Bravo out," he commanded softly. The German shepherd reluctantly backed out of the tight space, allowing Chen room to maneuver. Chen removed his jacket and wrapped it around Emma's tiny frame before gently, so gently, lifting her into his arms. She weighed almost nothing, maybe 30 pounds at most. As he shifted her position, Emma's eyes suddenly opened. They were unfocused, confused, but there was a flicker of awareness. Her lips moved, forming words that were barely audible. Chen leaned closer. "What is it, sweetheart? What are you trying to say?" "Bad man." Emma's voice was a broken whisper. "Dark, scary." "The bad man is gone now," Chen assured her, though his jaw clenched with anger. "You're safe, I promise you're safe." Emma's hand, small and freezing cold, reached out and touched Bravo's nose. The dog had moved closer again, his brown eyes locked on the child with protective intensity. Emma's lips curved into the smallest smile. "Doggy. Warm." "That's right, this is Bravo and he's a hero just like you. He found you, Emma, he never stopped looking." Chen's voice was thick with emotion. Emma's eyes closed again, but her breathing seemed marginally steadier. Chen secured her against his chest and began the ascent. Every step was calculated, every handhold tested. Bravo led the way, occasionally looking back to check on them, his protective instincts in full force. The climb that had taken 10 minutes going down took nearly 30 coming up. Chen's arms burned with the effort of maintaining a secure grip on Emma while navigating the treacherous terrain. Twice he nearly lost his footing. Each time he adjusted, breathed, and continued upward. When his head finally cleared the edge of the ravine, a cheer erupted from the assembled search teams. Paramedics rushed forward with a stretcher, but Chen waved them back. "I need to get her on level ground first." Sarah Martinez's scream cut through the morning air. "Emma, oh God, Emma." "Mrs. Martinez, please stay back." An officer held Sarah as she tried to rush forward. "Let the paramedics work." Chen laid Emma gently on the stretcher. The medical team descended on her immediately, checking vitals, wrapping her in thermal blankets, starting an IV line. Their movements were swift and professional, but Chen could see the concern etched on their faces. "Core temperature is 89 degrees, one paramedic announced grimly. "Severe hypothermia, possible frostbite on her extremities. We need to get her to Memorial Hospital now." "Pulse is weak but stabilizing. BP is 70/40. She's responsive but disoriented." As they prepared to load Emma into the ambulance, something unexpected happened. The little girl's eyes opened again, wider this time, and she began to cry, not from pain but from fear. Her small hand reached out, searching for something. "Doggy," she whimpered. "Want doggy." Chen looked at Bravo, then at the paramedics. "Let him ride with her." "Sir, that's highly irregular." "That dog just saved her life. She feels safe with him. He rides with her." Chen's tone left no room for argument. The paramedic hesitated, then nodded. "Okay, but he stays at her feet and doesn't interfere with treatment." Chen helped Bravo into the ambulance. The German shepherd immediately positioned himself near Emma's feet, his presence seeming to calm the frightened child. Her crying quieted, and she kept her eyes fixed on the dog as if he were a lifeline. Sarah climbed into the ambulance, tears streaming down her face as she reached for her daughter's hand. "Baby, Mommy's here. You're going to be okay. You're going to be okay." As the ambulance pulled away, sirens wailing, Tom Martinez turned to Chen. His face was a mixture of gratitude and anguish. "Thank you. God, thank you for finding her. If you hadn't—" "Mr. Martinez," Chen interrupted gently, "I need you to come with me. We need to talk to Detective Morrison immediately." Something in Chen's tone made Tom's relief falter. "What is it? What's wrong?" Chen pulled out his phone, showing Tom the photos of the boot prints, the neatly placed shoes, the impossible location where Emma had been found. "Your daughter didn't wander into that ravine, sir. There's no way she could have reached that spot on her own. Someone carried her there. Someone put her in that specific location and left her to die." The color drained from Tom's face. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying your daughter was abducted, Mr. Martinez, and whoever did this is still out there." Detective Morrison appeared at Chen's side, already on her phone. "I've got units pulling traffic camera footage from yesterday afternoon. That silver sedan Mrs. Martinez mentioned, we're going to find it. And I'm running background checks on everyone within a 5-mile radius who has a criminal record." Chen looked back at the ravine, his mind replaying the scene. The boot prints had been deliberate, almost arrogant. Whoever had done this hadn't been careful about covering their tracks. Either they were stupid, or they thought the terrain would prevent anyone from finding Emma in time. They hadn't counted on Bravo. "This wasn't random," Morrison said quietly, echoing Chen's thoughts. "Someone watched the Martinez family. Someone planned this. Someone knew that ravine was there and thought it was the perfect hiding place." "Well, they were wrong," Chen said, his hand resting on Bravo's head. The dog looked up at him with those intelligent brown eyes, tail wagging slightly. "Good boy, Bravo. You saved her. But now we have to make sure the person who did this never gets a chance to hurt another child." As investigators began processing the crime scene, establishing a perimeter around the ravine and photographing every inch of the area, Chen couldn't shake one disturbing thought. Emma had whispered "bad man" when she first woke up. She'd seen her abductor, which meant the person who'd done this knew that a 3-year-old witness had survived. And that made Emma Martinez still very much in danger. Memorial Hospital's pediatric intensive care unit hummed with the quiet efficiency of monitors and ventilators. In room 307, Emma Martinez lay in a bed that seemed far too large for her tiny body. Tubes ran from her arms. Warming blankets covered her from neck to toe. Sarah sat in a chair pulled close to the bed, holding her daughter's hand, afraid that if she let go, Emma might disappear again. It had been 3 days since the rescue. 3 days of doctors explaining medical terms like severe hypothermia, acute dehydration, and minor frostbite. 3 days of being told how lucky they were, how another few hours would have been fatal. But as Sarah looked at her daughter's face, pale and drawn, eyes that seemed to stare at nothing, she didn't feel lucky. She felt like they'd gotten Emma's body back, but some essential part of her daughter was still lost in that dark ravine. Dr. Patricia Chen, no relation to Officer Chen, entered the room with a warm smile. "Good morning, Emma. How are we feeling today?" Emma didn't respond. She hadn't spoken since uttering those few words in the ambulance. Her eyes briefly flickered to the doctor, then away, fixing on some point in the middle distance. "Physically, she's recovering remarkably well," Dr. Chen told Sarah quietly. "Her core temperature is back to normal. The frostbite on her toes will heal completely. But psychologically," she paused, choosing her words carefully. "Trauma in children this young can manifest as selective mutism. Emma may be processing what happened to her in ways she can't verbalize yet." "Will she ever talk about it?" Sarah's voice cracked. "Will she ever be my Emma again?" "Children are resilient, Mrs. Martinez, but she'll need time, and possibly therapy. The hospital has excellent child psychologists on staff." What Dr. Chen didn't say, what Sarah could see in her eyes, was that some children never fully recovered from trauma like this. Some carried the scars forever. There was one exception to Emma's silence, though. When Officer Chen brought Bravo to visit each day, Emma's face would light up with something resembling her old spark. She wouldn't speak, but she'd wrap her small arms around the German shepherd's neck and bury her face in his fur. And for those precious moments, Sarah could see her daughter somewhere behind those distant eyes. While Emma lay recovering in the hospital, Detective Morrison's investigation was moving at lightning speed. The boot prints from the ravine had been photographed, measured, and analyzed. Size 11, men's hiking boots, Columbia brand. Common enough, but it was a start. The silver sedan Sarah had seen proved more valuable. Traffic cameras had captured it on Willow Creek Road at 2:47 p.m. on the day of Emma's disappearance, a full hour before she vanished. The car had been parked at 3 different locations near the Martinez property throughout the afternoon. Whoever was driving had been watching, waiting. The license plate was partially obscured by mud, deliberately, Morrison suspected, but the state crime lab had enhanced the image enough to make out most of the numbers. Running those partial plates through the DMV database gave them 17 possible matches in Oregon. One name made Morrison's blood run cold: Raymond Shaw. She pulled his file and felt her stomach turn. Shaw was a registered sex offender, released from prison 18 months ago after serving 8 years for attempted abduction of a minor in Nevada. He'd been living in Willow Creek for exactly 3 months, in a small rental house 7 miles from the Martinez property. "Please tell me you're joking," Sheriff Hodges muttered when Morrison showed him the file. "I wish I was, and it gets worse." Morrison pulled up another image on her computer. "This is Shaw's vehicle registration. Silver 2019 Honda Civic, same make and model as the car on the traffic camera. That's enough for a search warrant. Already got a judge to sign off. Team's heading to his house now." The raid on Raymond Shaw's residence happened at 6:15 a.m. on the 4th day after Emma's rescue. 12 officers surrounded the small, rundown house on the outskirts of town. When they breached the door, they found Shaw in his living room, drinking coffee as if it were any normal morning. "Raymond Shaw, you're under arrest," Morrison announced, snapping handcuffs on his wrists. "For what?" Shaw's voice was calm, too calm. "I haven't done anything." "Where were you on October 15th, between the hours of 2 p.m. and 5 p.m.? "Home, watching TV, alone." His lips curved into a slight smile. "That's not a crime, detective." While Shaw was being transported to the station, the forensic team tore through his house. What they found turned the case from attempted kidnapping to something far more sinister. In Shaw's bedroom closet behind a false panel, investigators discovered a cardboard box. Inside were photographs, dozens of them, all children, different ages, different locations, different years. And in the corner of the box, wedged between 2 photos, was a small plastic hair clip shaped like a butterfly, pink with glitter. "Bag everything," Morrison ordered, her voice tight with barely controlled rage. But it was what they found in Shaw's garage that sealed his fate. Sitting on a workbench were a pair of hiking boots, Columbia brand, size 11, still caked with mud that forensic analysis would later prove matched soil samples from the ravine where Emma had been found. Shaw had been careless, or perhaps he'd been arrogant. Either way, the evidence was damning. Back at the station, Morrison entered the interrogation room where Shaw sat handcuffed to the table. She dropped a folder in front of him, photos of the boot prints, the traffic camera images, the boots from his garage. "Want to revise your story about being home alone?" Shaw stared at the photos, his expression unreadable. Then he did something that made Morrison's skin crawl. He smiled, actually smiled. "I want a lawyer," he said simply. "Of course you do." Morrison leaned across the table. "But let me tell you something, Shaw. We found the boots. We have your car on camera. We know you were there. And we have a witness." "A witness?" Shaw's smile faltered slightly. "What witness?" "Emma Martinez, 3 years old. The little girl you left to die in that ravine. She survived, and she saw you." For the first time, fear flickered across Shaw's face. He hadn't expected that. He'd counted on the elements, on the isolation, on the impossibility of a 3-year-old surviving overnight in those conditions. He'd underestimated the child, and he'd never anticipated a dog like Bravo. Morrison stood, gathering her files. "Emma's alive, Shaw, and when she's ready to talk, she's going to tell us everything. Every single detail about what you did to her." As she left the interrogation room, Morrison's phone buzzed. It was the forensics lab. The hair clip they'd found in Shaw's possession didn't belong to Emma. It belonged to a little girl named Sophie Henderson, who'd gone missing 2 years ago in Idaho. She'd never been found. A sick feeling settled in Morrison's stomach as she realized this wasn't Shaw's first victim. The photographs, the trophies, Raymond Shaw was a serial predator, and Emma Martinez might be the only victim who'd ever escaped to tell the tale. But there was one massive problem. Emma wasn't talking. The prosecution would need her testimony to make their case stick. Without it, a clever defense attorney might create enough reasonable doubt to let Shaw walk free. Morrison headed back to the hospital, knowing that somehow, some way, They needed to help Emma find her voice again. Not just for justice, but to make sure Shaw never got the chance to hunt another child. The clock was ticking. The trial would begin in 90 days. And a 3-year-old girl held the key to everything. The Willow Creek County Courthouse had never seen a media circus like this. Satellite trucks lined the street. Reporters jostled for position on the courthouse steps. Inside, every seat in the gallery was filled an hour before proceedings were scheduled to begin. The case of the state of Oregon v. Raymond Shaw had captured national attention. A monster who preyed on children, finally caught because one victim survived. Sarah and Tom Martinez sat in the front row behind the prosecution table, holding hands so tightly their knuckles had turned white. 3 months had passed since Emma's rescue. 3 months of nightmares, therapy sessions, and watching their daughter slowly, painfully begin to heal. But Emma still wasn't talking. Not about that day. Not about the bad man. Not about anything that mattered to the case. District Attorney Catherine Wells stood at the prosecution table, reviewing her notes one final time. She was a veteran prosecutor with a reputation for being tough but fair. She'd put away rapists, murderers, and child predators, but she'd never felt pressure like this. Everything hinged on a 3-year-old witness who might not be able to testify. "All rise," the bailiff's voice rang out. The Honorable Judge Margaret Thornton presiding. Judge Thornton entered, a woman in her early 60s with steel-gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She'd been on the bench for 23 years and had a reputation for running a tight courtroom. She settled into her seat and surveyed the packed gallery. "Please be seated. We're here for the trial of Raymond Shaw, who stands accused of kidnapping, attempted murder, and child endangerment. Is the prosecution ready?" "Ready, Your Honor," D.A. Wells stood. "Is the defense ready?" Shaw's attorney, Marcus Bellamy, rose smoothly. Bellamy was expensive, the kind of defense lawyer who specialized in impossible cases and somehow found ways to create reasonable doubt where none should exist. He wore a $5,000 suit and a practiced expression of calm confidence. "Ready, Your Honor." "Very well. Ms. Wells, your opening statement." D.A. Wells approached the jury box, making eye contact with each of the 12 citizens who would decide Shaw's fate. "Ladies and gentlemen, this case is about evil in its purest form. Raymond Shaw," she pointed at the defendant, "is a predator. On October 15th of last year, he stalked the Martinez family. He watched them. He waited for his opportunity. And when 3-year-old Emma Martinez was playing in her backyard, he took her." The jury listened, their faces grave as Wells painted the picture. The frantic search, the terrified parents, the discovery of Emma in a location where no child could have reached alone. Emma Martinez was left to die in a ravine. The defendant placed her in a location so isolated, so dangerous, that he believed she would never be found. But he didn't count on Officer Marcus Chen and his search dog, Bravo. They found Emma. They saved her life. And now Emma will tell you in her own words what Raymond Shaw did to her. Wells paused, letting that sink in. "You'll see boot prints that match the defendant's shoes. You'll see traffic camera footage of his vehicle near the Martinez home. You'll hear about photographs found in his possession, photographs of other children, other victims. But most importantly, you'll hear from Emma herself. Justice demands that Raymond Shaw never be allowed to hurt another child, and justice is what we're here to seek." When Wells sat down, Bellamy rose for the defense's opening statement. His approach was different, softer, more reasonable. "Ladies and gentlemen, the prosecution wants you to believe this is a simple case, but it's not. Yes, Emma Martinez went missing. Yes, it was traumatic, but where is the evidence that my client was involved?" He spread his hands. "Traffic camera footage of a car similar to thousands of others. Boot prints from one of the most popular hiking boot brands in America. That's not evidence, that's coincidence." Bellamy's voice took on a sympathetic tone. "No one denies that something terrible happened to Emma Martinez, but my client was not involved. The prosecution's entire case rests on the testimony of a traumatized 3-year-old child who hasn't spoken coherently about that day to anyone. Not to police, not to therapists, not to her own parents. And now the state expects her to provide testimony detailed enough to convict a man of attempted murder. He shook his head slowly. That's not justice. That's a rush to judgment. The burden of proof is on the prosecution, and when this trial is over, you'll see that they simply haven't met that burden. Raymond Shaw is innocent, and I ask that you remember that throughout these proceedings. The first week of trial was a parade of witnesses. Forensic experts testified about the boot prints, soil samples, and timeline. Officer Chen described the rescue, his testimony so emotional that several jurors wiped their eyes. Detective Morrison walked the jury through the investigation, her voice steady as she described finding the photographs in Shaw's home. But the defense chipped away at everything. The boot prints could have been made by anyone. The photographs were circumstantial. There was no proof Shaw had taken them. The traffic camera footage showed a silver sedan, but you couldn't clearly identify the driver. By the end of week 1, D.A. Wells was worried. The physical evidence was strong, but without Emma's testimony, the defense was successfully creating doubt. She needed Emma to take the stand. Dr. Patricia Chen, the child psychologist who'd been working with Emma, was called to the judge's chambers for a private conference. Sarah and Tom were present, along with both attorneys. Dr. Chen, in your professional opinion, is Emma capable of testifying? Judge Thornton asked. The psychologist hesitated. Emma has made remarkable progress. She's speaking again to her parents, to me, in controlled environments, but she still hasn't discussed the actual abduction. When we approach the topic, she becomes nonverbal again. It's a trauma response. So she can't testify, Bellamy said quickly. I didn't say that, Dr. Chen countered. I said she hasn't yet. There may be ways to make her feel safe enough to talk about it. Your Honor, this is absurd, Bellamy interjected. The prosecution is building their entire case around a child who can't or won't speak about the alleged crime. This is prejudicial to my client's right to a fair trial. Ms. Wells, Judge Thornton turned to the prosecutor. Wells took a deep breath. Your Honor, Emma Martinez is the victim and the key witness. We're prepared to create an environment where she feels safe enough to testify. We're requesting permission to modify the courtroom, remove the audience, allow comfort items, whatever it takes. The defendant has a right to face his accuser, Bellamy argued. And the victim has a right to be heard, Wells shot back. Emma is 3 years old. She's been through hell. We're not asking for special treatment. We're asking for basic accommodations that allow a traumatized child to tell the truth. Judge Thornton was silent for a long moment. Finally, she spoke. I'm going to allow the prosecution to attempt Emma's testimony under modified conditions. The courtroom will be cleared except for essential personnel. We'll bring in child-appropriate furnishings. Ms. Wells, you have one shot at this. If Emma can't or won't testify, we move forward with the evidence you have. Sarah gripped Tom's hand. One shot, that's all they had. The night before Emma's scheduled testimony, Sarah sat on her daughter's bed watching her sleep. Emma looked peaceful now, her blonde curls spread across the pillow, her teddy bear clutched tightly. But Sarah knew the nightmare still came. The screams in the middle of the night, the crying for the doggie who'd saved her. Please, baby, Sarah whispered. Please find your voice tomorrow, not for us, not even for the lawyers, but for yourself, so that bad man can never hurt you or anyone else ever again. But as morning dawned on the day of Emma's testimony, one question haunted everyone involved in the case. Would a 3-year-old girl be able to face her abductor and tell the truth? The answer would determine everything. The courtroom on the morning of Emma's testimony looked nothing like a traditional court of law. Judge Thornton had ordered it transformed. The imposing judge's bench remained, but the jury box had been softened with child-friendly decorations. In the center of the floor, where witnesses typically sat, was a small table with crayons, coloring books, and stuffed animals. The gallery had been completely cleared. Only the judge, jury, attorneys, court reporter, bailiff, and Emma's parents remained. Raymond Shaw sat at the defense table, his expression carefully neutral but his hands clenched into fists beneath the table. For 2 weeks, he'd watched the prosecution build their case, and for 2 weeks his confidence had grown as Emma remained silent. Without her testimony, the case was circumstantial at best. He might actually walk free. At 9:00 a.m., the side door opened. Sarah Martinez entered first, holding Emma's hand. The little girl wore a yellow dress decorated with sunflowers, her favorite. Her blonde curls had been carefully brushed and tied back with a ribbon, but her face was pale, her eyes downcast, and she clutched her mother's hand like a lifeline. "Good morning, Emma," Judge Thornton said softly, her typically stern voice gentle. "My name is Judge Thornton. Do you know why you're here today?" Emma said nothing. She pressed herself against her mother's leg. "Emma, honey," Sarah knelt down to her daughter's level. "Remember what Dr. Patricia said. These people just want to hear about what happened. You're safe here. Daddy and I are right here with you." Still, Emma remained silent. Her eyes darted around the courtroom, landing briefly on Raymond Shaw before quickly looking away. Her breathing quickened. D.A. Wells approached slowly, holding a stuffed rabbit. "Hi, Emma, I'm Katie. Is it okay if I talk with you for a little bit?" Emma's grip on her mother's hand tightened, but she gave the smallest nod. "That's wonderful, you're being so brave." Wells knelt down, making herself smaller, less threatening. "Emma, do you remember the day you went missing? The day you were playing in your backyard?" Emma's expression closed off. Her eyes went distant. She shook her head, not in response but in refusal. This was the wall they'd hit in every therapy session. The moment Emma's mind shut down to protect itself from the trauma. "Emma, I know it's scary to talk about, but—" "No," Emma's voice was barely a whisper. "Don't wanna." Wells looked at Judge Thornton helplessly. They were losing her before they'd even begun. "Your Honor," Bellamy stood, "this is clearly causing distress to the child. Perhaps we should—" "Sit down, Mr. Bellamy," Judge Thornton said sharply. Then more gently, "Emma, would you like to take a break? We can wait as long as you need." But Emma was already retreating further into herself. Tears welled in her eyes. Her small body began to shake. Sarah pulled her daughter into her arms, and Emma buried her face in her mother's shoulder. "I think we need to stop," Sarah said, her own voice thick with emotion. "This isn't working, she's not ready." Tom Martinez stood from his seat in the gallery, his face anguished. They were so close. The monster who'd hurt their daughter was sitting 20 feet away, and they couldn't prove what he'd done. D.A. Wells felt defeat settling over her like a heavy blanket. Without Emma's testimony, Shaw would likely walk. The boot prints, the traffic camera footage, it wasn't enough. Bellamy would create reasonable doubt, and a jury couldn't convict without certainty. Then from the back of the courtroom, a voice spoke up. "Your Honor, I have a request." Everyone turned. Officer Marcus Chen stood near the rear door, holding a leash. At the other end of that leash sat Bravo, the German shepherd who'd found Emma 3 months ago. The dog's vest read "Search and Rescue" in bold letters, and his intelligent brown eyes surveyed the courtroom calmly. "Officer Chen, this is highly irregular," Judge Thornton said, though her tone was curious rather than dismissive. "I understand, Your Honor, but Emma hasn't been able to speak about what happened to her except in one situation, when Bravo is present. At the hospital during therapy sessions, whenever the dog is there, she opens up. She trusts him." Bellamy jumped to his feet. "Your Honor, this is absurd. A dog in the courtroom during testimony." "It's actually not unprecedented," Wells interjected quickly, her mind racing. "There's legal precedent for comfort animals in court, especially with child witnesses. Therapy dogs have been used in several states to help traumatized children testify." Judge Thornton considered this. She looked at Emma, still crying into her mother's shoulder, then at Bravo, sitting calmly beside Officer Chen. "Ms. Wells, can you cite specific cases?" People v. Chenault Masters in New York, 2011. State v. Smith in Washington, 2014. Both cases involved child witnesses and comfort dogs. The appeals courts upheld the practice. "Your Honor, this is prejudicial," Bellamy argued. "A dog creates sympathy. It manipulates the jury's emotions." "Mr. Bellamy, I'm going to allow it." Judge Thornton's voice was firm. "This child has been through extraordinary trauma. If the presence of the dog helps her testify, then justice demands we make that accommodation. Officer Chen, bring Bravo forward." Chen walked Bravo down the center aisle. The dog's nails clicked softly on the courtroom floor. As they approached, Emma's head lifted from her mother's shoulder. Her tear-stained face turned toward the sound. "Doggy," her voice was small, hopeful. And then she saw him. Bravo, the hero who'd found her in the darkness, the warm presence who'd stayed with her when she was cold and alone, the friend who'd visited her in the hospital every single day. Emma's entire demeanor changed. She slipped from her mother's arms and moved toward Bravo with tentative steps. The German shepherd's tail began to wag, slowly at first, then faster. When Emma reached him, she wrapped her small arms around his thick neck and buried her face in his fur. The courtroom was absolutely silent. Every person present, judge, jury, attorneys, watched this moment with held breath. Then Emma pulled back slightly, looked at Bravo's gentle brown eyes, and turned to face the entire courtroom. Her small hand pointed directly at the German shepherd, and she spoke, her voice clear and strong, 2 words that would echo through that courtroom and beyond. "He saved me." The simplicity of those words, the absolute truth in them. Several jurors wiped their eyes. Emma continued, her voice growing stronger with each word, her hand still resting on Bravo's head as if drawing courage from him. "I was playing, in the backyard, and the bad man came." She turned, and for the first time she looked directly at Raymond Shaw. "That man, he said he had puppies in his car. I wanted to see puppies." Sarah's hand flew to her mouth, tears streaming down her face. "He picked me up, put me in his car. I was scared. I cried for Mommy." Emma's voice wavered but didn't break. "He drove and drove. Then he carried me into the trees. It was dark and scary. He put me in the rocks in the cold place. He said to be quiet, that nobody would find me." The courtroom remained frozen, hanging on every word from this tiny, brave witness. "I was so cold and dark. I cried and cried. Then..." Emma's face lit up, transforming. "Then I heard barking, and Bravo found me. He came into the little space and laid down with me. He was so warm. He kept me safe until the policeman came." Emma looked up at Officer Chen, then back at Bravo. "Bravo didn't let me be alone. He stayed with me. He saved me from the bad man." She pointed one more time at Raymond Shaw, her finger steady despite her small hand. "That's the bad man. He took me. He left me to die, but Bravo found me." The power of truth from the mouth of a child was undeniable. Shaw's face had gone completely white. His carefully maintained composure had cracked. For the first time since the trial began, he looked exactly like what he was, a monster cornered by his crimes. D.A. Wells felt tears on her own cheeks. "Thank you, Emma. You're the bravest girl I've ever met." Emma smiled. A real smile, perhaps the first genuine smile she'd managed since that terrible day 3 months ago. She sat down on the floor right there in the courtroom, her arms around Bravo, the dog who'd given her the courage to finally tell her truth. The deliberation took exactly 1 hour and 43 minutes. When the jury foreman stood to read the verdict, the courtroom was so quiet you could hear people breathing. In the case of the state of Oregon versus Raymond Shaw, on the count of kidnapping in the 1st degree, we find the defendant guilty. On the count of attempted murder, we find the defendant guilty. On the count of child endangerment, we find the defendant guilty. The word guilty echoed 3 times, each repetition landing like a hammer of justice. Sarah Martinez collapsed against her husband, her body shaking with sobs of relief. Tom wrapped his arms around her, his own tears falling freely. For 3 months, they'd lived in fear that the man who'd tried to murder their daughter might walk free. Now, finally, they could breathe. Raymond Shaw showed no emotion as he was led away in handcuffs. But as he passed the prosecution table, his eyes met Emma's one final time. The little girl sat on the floor next to Bravo, her hand resting on the dog's back. She didn't flinch, didn't look away. She simply stared back at the monster who tried to destroy her, and in that moment Shaw understood he hadn't won. This child had survived him, defeated him. She would live and grow and thrive while he would rot in a prison cell. Judge Thornton's sentencing 3 weeks later was swift and severe. "Mr. Shaw, you are a predator of the worst kind. You stalked an innocent child. You abducted her. You left her to die in conditions where you believed she would never be found. But you made one critical mistake. You underestimated the courage of that child and the dedication of those who searched for her." The judge's voice hardened. "It is the sentence of this court that you be imprisoned for life without the possibility of parole. Furthermore, evidence provided to law enforcement suggests your crimes extend beyond this case. Federal authorities are investigating your connection to other missing children. You will never again walk free to harm another child." As Shaw was escorted from the courtroom for the last time, D.A. Wells squeezed Sarah's hand. "It's over. He can never hurt Emma or anyone else again." But while Shaw's story ended in a prison cell, Emma's story was just beginning its next chapter. The trial had made national headlines. 3-year-old's testimony convicts kidnapper read the front page of every major newspaper. But more than the conviction, people were captivated by the story of Bravo, the heroic German shepherd who'd refused to give up, who'd found a little girl against impossible odds, and who'd given her the courage to speak her truth. Officer Marcus Chen's phone rang constantly with interview requests. Good Morning America, The Today Show, 60 Minutes. Everyone wanted to talk to the K-9 officer and his remarkable dog, but Chen was selective, agreeing only to interviews that would highlight the importance of search and rescue K-9 programs. "Bravo isn't special because he's extraordinary," Chen told a reporter from CNN. "He's special because he represents what all search and rescue dogs do. They save lives. They never give up. And they do it without expecting anything in return except maybe a tennis ball and a scratch behind the ears." The Martinez family watched these interviews from their living room, Emma nestled between her parents on the couch. Each time Bravo appeared on screen, Emma would point and say, "That's my Bravo. He's a hero." The words "my Bravo" had become a constant in the Martinez household. Emma talked about Bravo constantly. She drew pictures of him. She insisted on reading books about German shepherds before bed. And twice a week, Officer Chen brought Bravo for visits that had become as essential to Emma's healing as any therapy session. Dr. Patricia Chen documented Emma's remarkable recovery. "The transformation is extraordinary," she told Sarah and Tom during a follow-up appointment. Emma's trauma was severe, but her bond with Bravo provided an anchor point for healing. He represented safety, courage, and unconditional love at a time when her world had been shattered. That connection gave her a foundation to rebuild on. 6 months after the trial, the Martinez family made a decision that surprised no one who knew their story. "Bravo is retiring from active duty," Officer Chen told them during one of their visits. "He's 7 years old now, and it's time for him to rest. He's earned it. The department is looking for a good home for him, somewhere he can live out his golden years in comfort." Before Chen could finish the sentence, Emma threw her arms around Bravo's neck. "He lives with us. Bravo lives with us forever." Sarah and Tom looked at each other, then at Chen. "We'd be honored to adopt him," Tom said, his voice thick with emotion. "That dog saved our daughter's life. He gave us our family back. If you're willing, we'd love to give him a home." Chen smiled, though his eyes were wet. "I can't think of anyone better." The adoption was finalized 2 weeks later. Bravo officially became part of the Martinez family, sleeping in Emma's room every night, his steady breathing a comfort that chased away nightmares. But the story's impact extended far beyond one family. The publicity surrounding Emma's case led to a surge in donations for K-9 search and rescue programs across the country. The Martinez family, wanting to honor Bravo and all dogs like him, established the Emma's Heroes Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to funding, training, and supporting search and rescue K-9 units. These dogs save lives, Sarah told a crowd of 500 people at the foundation's first fundraising gala. They work in all weather, all conditions, never asking for payment or recognition. They just do their jobs because they love it, because they're driven to help. Bravo found our daughter when we thought all hope was lost. How many other families need that same miracle? The foundation raised $2.3 million in its first year, funding new K-9 units in 12 states and providing training scholarships for handlers. 3 years after her rescue, Emma Martinez stood on a stage at the foundation's annual benefit dinner. She was 6 years old now, confident and articulate, with only the faintest shadows remaining from her trauma. Bravo, now 10 years old and graying around the muzzle, sat beside her in his retired service vest. Emma had insisted on speaking at the event, practicing her speech for weeks. Sarah and Tom sat in the front row, watching their daughter with awe. This was the same child who'd been mute with trauma, who'd been too terrified to speak about what happened to her. And now here she stood, addressing hundreds of people without a trace of fear. Bravo didn't just find me in the woods that day, Emma said, her small voice amplified by the microphone. He found me when I was lost inside, too. I was so scared after the bad man took me. I couldn't talk. I couldn't sleep. I had bad dreams every night. But then Bravo was there, and he showed me it was okay to be brave again. She knelt down beside the old dog, wrapping one arm around him. Bravo's tail wagged slowly, and he licked her cheek, making the audience laugh with delight. Dogs like Bravo are real heroes, Emma continued. They save people because that's what they do. They don't give up, ever. And because Bravo didn't give up on me, I learned not to give up on myself either. Emma looked directly at the audience, her blue eyes bright with determination. That bad man thought he could make me disappear. He thought nobody would find me, but he was wrong. Bravo found me. Bravo kept me warm. Bravo gave me courage. And now I want to help other kids have their own Bravo, their own hero who never gives up. The standing ovation lasted 3 full minutes. There wasn't a dry eye in the house. As the years passed, Emma and Bravo remained inseparable. The old German shepherd attended her school's career day, where Emma proudly told her classmates about search and rescue dogs. He was there for her first day of 2nd grade, waiting at home to greet her with his gentle brown eyes and slowly wagging tail. He slept beside her bed every single night, a guardian who'd proven he would protect her against any darkness. On Bravo's 12th birthday, the city of Willow Creek held a ceremony in the town square, declaring it Bravo Day and unveiling a bronze statue of the heroic German shepherd. The inscription read, "In honor of Bravo and all search and rescue K-9s who never give up, one saved life is everything." Emma stood beside the statue, now 8 years old, holding the leash of the real Bravo, older, slower, but still the same brave heart who'd found her when all hope seemed lost. "Thank you, Bravo," Emma whispered, kissing the top of his gray muzzle. "For finding me, for saving me, for teaching me how to be brave. You're my best friend forever." And as the sun set over Willow Creek, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, a little girl and her hero dog stood together, a living testament to courage, resilience, and the unbreakable bond between a child and the animal who saved not just her life, but her soul. Some scars never fully fade, but with love, patience, and a loyal companion by your side, even the deepest wounds can heal. Emma Martinez was proof of that. And she would spend the rest of her life making sure other children, had the same chance at hope that Bravo had given her. The end.